Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is a very exciting day. I am having my first job interview that I've ever had in about a year now, actually, which is kind of crazy. But I'm so excited to be taking this step. I feel like this is the first interview of many to come, hopefully to find my next long-term job, wherever it may be. I had the thought yesterday that why don't I film today and bring you guys along for today and what I do to prepare for an interview. Currently, I have less than an hour to prepare because it starts at 1 and it's currently 12:10. But thankfully for me, I've done many interviews, and with the education and training that I've gotten from my college, I feel like I'm generally a well-prepared interviewee. So I thought I would bring you along and show you what I do to prepare. Unfortunately, the interview will be on my phone and I film off my phone, so I won't be able to record myself doing my interview. However, I figured with this format, this would help give you a before and after kind of vibe of how my interview process looks like. And hopefully that will be helpful to some people. So this is the current setup I got going on. I have my portable charger right there, plugged into my phone to keep it charged so I don't have to worry about it dying in the middle of the interview. I have my planner, which I'm going to jot down some dates that in case they ask for things like my availability or the day that I can first start at the job, I'll be able to reference this right away. And then I have my laptop, which is arguably the most important part of how I prepare for an interview. On here, I like to have my resume pulled up as well as some pre-answered questions so that when they ask me, I'll be ready to answer. And you'll have to bear with me, the sun is currently out, so the lighting is going to change and flux throughout this video. I'll do my best to keep it as stable as possible, but it's just bound to happen when you're using natural light, So after my interview, what I'll try to do is record my laptop screen so I can put it up here to show you guys what I'm talking about as I do it. But since I only have about 40 minutes until the interview, I really don't have time to mess with the screen recording settings because, again, I'm not a YouTube pro by any means. So for now, I'll just verbally explain what I am doing to you guys. But in your guys' time, it will be all the same time because you'll see right up here as I'm explaining it. So like I said, I like to open up my resume. So I will go ahead and do that. And for obvious reasons, the resume that I will show on my screen will have either certain information blurred or just removed for privacy reasons, of course. As a student at my college, I heavily used my career center that was available to me on the campus. So I have gone in for many, many meetings on how to build a resume. At least for a business management student, there's plenty of resume templates that are free online, especially for your major. You're gonna want to accommodate your resume style to that major. Example, a business management major needs to keep a very professional looking, very succinct, with lots of lists and bullet points type of resume look. But for a more creative major, you might want to actually implement like graphics or colors or different shapes to show off your creative side if you're going into more of a creative field. But anyhow, the template you are seeing on the screen, that is my basic template that I use for my resume. And all I have to do every year or so when I get a new job is just update it, because that's a very important tip too, is keeping your most recent job experiences listed. Because I have plenty of volunteer things that I did back in high school or small little jobs that I might have done back in the past. But now being a postgraduate student, I have just more important job positions that I can list instead. So you want to use your resume to your advantage and not to your disadvantage. So yeah, after I have my resume pulled up, what I will typically do then is create a Google document to start listing things that are generally asked in interviews. And typically year to year, I will maintain a Google document and I just update that as well. Just like my resume, I'll just update that with either better answers or more accurate answers for my interview. Or when I have interviews and they ask different types of questions that I've never been asked before, because some interviews will ask you uber specific questions, I might add that to the list of questions that I'm prepared to answer because I have now answered them in a prior interview. This just in, I am just checking my email now and it looks like I have a second interview today at 2:30 for a different job. So I'm going to, first of all, center myself. We're gonna take a deep breath. And now that we've taken a deep breath, I'm going to still focus on this first interview and finish preparing for that because that is what's coming up first. And I'll complete this first interview, and then after this first interview, then start preparing for my second interview, which should be fairly easy because I can just pretty much copy paste the same answers that I would be answering to my second interview. The only answers that change really are things like why you would want to work at a certain place. It's always good to do a little research on the company, what their values are, and find good quality questions to ask them about the position. So like rereading the job description is always good to help figure that out. But anyway, I guess I'm having 2 interviews today. I thought I was just having 1, but you know what? We're gonna have 2, we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do a great job. We are speaking positive words because we want to go into this positively, and at the end of the day, it's just a job interview, and if it doesn't work out, it just wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. And that has been a long journey on my end to figure that out, in all honesty, because I used to take it so personally when a job wouldn't hire me. But really, it just wasn't meant for both sides, so you will just have to keep searching until one clicks for both ends. But anyway, that is so exciting. I can't believe I have 2 today. I'm shocked. I think both interviews are only about 15 to 30 minutes each. Thankfully, I did block out an hour of time just in case this interview goes overtime. Now, seeing this email response be set for 2:30, that's really good, so I have a good buffer time to prep for this interview. Since I have little time before my interview, I'm just going to start copying and pasting onto my new interview document from a past interview that I did, and just edit some of the bullet points so that I'm obviously not speaking to points that don't apply for this current job. I think I'm gonna go ahead and focus on this because my interview is coming up so quickly. So I wanna make sure that I'm prepared and not just trying to double task, like explain what's happening while genuinely also trying to fill out my information. Wish me good luck for this first interview, and I will check in with you guys as soon as it's over just to give an update on how it went. And then I'll head into my second interview and then do another checkup on how that went, and then finally give you the rundown on what you would find on my screen if I'm just doing a phone interview or a Zoom interview. These things are great to help you prepare beforehand. Or even if the interview is in person, doing this like the night before and just reading over it so you have like topic points and things just already in the back of your mind that you can bring up, I personally have found can be also really helpful for an in-person interview as well. I will see you guys after this first interview. Wish me luck, y'all. It went so well. I'm so happy. Sorry for my very high-pitched voice. I get this when I get excited, but I am so excited. It was a quick interview, but she was so polite and nice and answered all my questions, and I just felt so confident the whole time during the interview. Like, I think a tip I have for people who might be anxious about interviews like me, like I get super anxious about interviews sometimes, is to not be afraid to assert your dominance because it really helps your confidence throughout the interview process. Like, she hopped on and she just started, talking about the company and what have you, and that was really it. It's one of the shorter interviews I've ever done. But I still had questions, so before she had the chance to hang up, I was like, oh, before we end this call, like, is it okay if I have some questions for you? Do you have time for some questions? And she was like, oh, yeah, go for it. Like, she was shocked that I had questions, which is always good to have questions. And these are genuine questions. Like, I wanted to know the answers to these, so I'm glad I asked them. But yeah, just asserting dominance in that small little way helped me feel confident and not stupid asking the questions that I needed to ask to get a full understanding of the job position. That was my first interview that I've done in like a year, and it went well, and it is a major confidence boost for me, and I'm very happy about it. And if the next interview doesn't go so well, I think this is going to be the confidence boost I need to get through it, and I'm very excited for it. Have about an hour until the next one, and I'll catch you guys after that. All right, see ya. Just finished my second interview for the day, and it also went really well. Gosh, I'm so blessed today. 2 interviews in one day that both arguably went pretty well. I gotta say, the first interview went a lot more smoothly. The second interview, I think I kept choking on words and getting tongue twisted. So I think it's all in my head right now. Like, I'm being very self-critical over my answers, but either way, both interviews went well considering, because I mean, by the end of them, both of them wanted to know when I could start working, and I think both are willing to hire me. So that's always like a good thing, you know? So yeah, wow, I'm so blessed. I think I genuinely would be happy working for either one at this point. They both have pros and cons. The first job that I interviewed for today would be full-time. However, it's variable pay. It depends on the week. One week I could be paid less, but other weeks I could be paid a lot more than I'd be making at the second job I interviewed for today. So there's that. So like on a good week, I could be paid a lot more than I would be paid on an average week at the second job. However, the first job does not have benefits, so I would have to be paying for my own health insurance and things like that. Or on the flip side, the first job is something I have lots of experience in and would feel very comfortable doing. The second job, however, it pays less than the first job, but it's not a variable pay, it's a set pay. It'll also be a full-time position, so that's good. And this one comes with benefits. So there's obvious pros and cons to that. Like, yes, I inherently get paid less. However, benefits are included, so I don't have to worry about health insurance and all that stuff. The other thing about the second job is that it provides really good experience in areas that I don't have experience in. And they also have a really awesome mission attached to their business. And like I've said in previous videos, that's very important to me, working for something that I want to help achieve a bigger goal than just earning money and making a career. At this point, currently, I'm leaning towards the second job I interviewed for today, because not only is there stability in that job and a regular schedule with that job, it also provides off time, and with that, I could DoorDash on the side if needed. Feeling extremely blessed right now. The only problem with the second job that I interviewed for today is that they want to hire immediately, and I'm not planning on moving to that area for another month or so. So she said she'd stay in contact with me. I'm hoping that it stays open long enough that I can get there. This is also a great pusher for me to start really finalizing plans to get over there, which is great. It's crazy how you can go for weeks, months at a time, job hunting relentlessly, trying to be motivated to keep interviewing for jobs and applying for jobs and updating your resume and cover letters and finding references and all the jazz that it takes to apply for jobs. And then some days it's just like a lightning strike. You just get this really lucky day and it gives you like all the hope and energy you need to persevere through this process. I'm going to now go ahead and talk you through everything that's on my screen that I look at and prepare for during an interview, like I said before that I was going to try to do. And forgive me, I'm gonna try to do it in a quick manner. I've been out here all day. It's 34 degrees and I got the heater on and I have my coat on my lap that I'm using as a blanket. However, I'm still frozen like a popsicle. So I'm gonna do this kind of quickly so I can head inside. All right. I'm hoping this is enough space to put the screen recording right here. I have to remember how to screen record. I screen recorded for that one video that I made, but I already forgot how to do that on my laptop, so give me 1 second. Also, my fingers are frozen because it's cold out here. Don't mind me, I'm just working on removing some of the personal information from my current resume. So bear with me, it's gonna take a minute. Okay, I think we are recording. I hope this is enough space for y'all to see what's on my screen. Okay, so this is an example of a resume for, again, business management specific students. At least this is what my university suggested for business management majors specifically. I'm sure, generally speaking, most business majors could use a similar format. However, if you're in like the College of Sciences or the College of Arts, like I was saying before, or just a different industry that would be looking for something more eye-catching, I would definitely recommend Googling resume templates. They're really easy to find. But yeah, at the top, you're gonna see my name. It's in bold letters. You want them to know right away what resume are they looking at. There's gonna be a lot of resumes coming in. So that's my name at the top. And then you'll put your current address, phone number, and email address right underneath so they know where you're from, or where you're located, I should say, and how to contact you best through those two contact options. Immediately underneath, I have my education listed. I didn't change anything on this just because I don't mind you guys seeing this. I graduated from Valparaiso University, which is in Valparaiso, Indiana. This was in May of this year. And then right underneath is my degree that I attained. It seems rather lengthy. Like, I personally wouldn't have thought to put it this lengthy, but again, this is what the Career Center at my college recommended that I did. So you can see I have Bachelor of Business Administration, which is business, comma, concentration is management. And then right underneath that, I have my study abroad experience listed. I think lots of people question whether you can list it, how to list it, if it's good to list it. I think it's a great thing to put on your resume. This is a very easy way to put it, is just right under your education, because you did study abroad in that country. So here you can see that I have University of Newcastle, which is in Newcastle, Australia. And then I just explained that this was my semester abroad, and I put the dates that I was there for, so they don't think I got another degree there or something. It's just a semester abroad. But I think it's also just a great topic of conversation. If interviewers want to bring that up, if they really looked at your resume deeply, they might bring it up and ask you about your experience abroad and what you learned there. I think generally speaking, most students have a great time when they study abroad, so it'll be a very positive conversation to have during your interview, so definitely recommend. And then scrolling down after education section, we have the work experience section. In the past, before I had work experience and I was like, what do I put on my resume? This was back when I was a freshman in college, and I heavily used the Career Center because I did not know A, where to start, how do you even make a resume, and B, what can I put on it? Like, what is good to put on it? And if you don't have lots of work experience, a great opportunity to really think on your time in high school and what you accomplished during that time. So for some students, you might be heavily involved in sports, maybe have a leadership position on your sports team in high school. Definitely list that and list what you learned from it. Others might be involved in clubs at their schools, so list those positions as well. Even if you were just a member, you can still list it. Even if it wasn't a leadership position, you can still list it as something that you were involved in, something you took things away from and learned from personally. It's a great thing to list if it impacted you. For me, and the way I was brought up, most of the things I listed as my experience on my first version of my resume was just volunteer opportunities. Me and my family volunteered a lot in our community, so I listed those. I was also heavily involved in my church. And then other things I listed, I was a pet sitter and a babysitter, and those have great skills to learn from as well. So yeah, even if you don't have lots of work experience, you would be shocked if you just think back on your time in your earlier years of everything that you've ever done. Again, depending on the industry you're going in, your resume will look different. So this resume, as you can tell, there's lots of words, very little white space, very little spaces in between each section. Because being a college or business student, they heavily recommended that you show that you have experience and gained skills. You want to leave as little white space as possible, because another recommendation was to make it fit onto one page, which is a big thing for resumes. Because if you're going to make it longer than one page, then you want to make sure that it's worth it and that there's good content that should be read for 2 pages worth of a resume. That being said, I thought we could go over a couple examples that I have listed here. I took out the names of the companies and cities and states and stuff just for personal reasons. However, I did leave my DoorDash experience because I talk about DoorDash on my YouTube all the time, so I didn't mind listing that as well. So starting at the top, for every position listed under work experience, you want to highlight it and draw the eye's attention to it to show that it's a new start to a section. Since there are such little spaces in between each position, you want to differentiate the section somewhat. So I have the names of the companies bolded. And then right after that, I list the city and the state. And then to the right, to keep what I have going on at the top, you want to list your dates all the way on the right of how long he worked there. And right underneath that first line, I have in italics the position title that I held at that company, which is again just a visual way to show that this is a different section than the following section, if that makes sense. And then in bullet points, because we are big fans of bullet points, this is when you want to use your strong verbs. So every time I revisit my resume and edit it throughout the years, I always Google strong verbs, strong adjectives to use in resumes. Because a tip I heard once was that you never want to hear the same verb twice. So even if you did essentially the same action or you did the same skill, you want to find different words to phrase it so it looks more intriguing and diverse to the eye. I have 2 bullet points underneath that one. And then the next 2 are 2 jobs that I held at my university. So for the first one, I had the name of the department and then the name of the university, same jazz underneath. And then the second one, I worked at my residential hall. Other schools call it a dorm. So you can put the name of the dorm and again, the name of the university, the position you had, and what you got from it. The next example I have is for jobs that you might have reoccurring. So this one camp that I worked at for 3 consecutive summers. However, they were only 3 months at a time, but they were 3 separate positions that I gained different things from. And so my college recommends that for the date, you just put the start and end date from the start of when you first started to the end date of the last position you held there when it ended. So it does look like I've worked at this place for 3 years, and reality is just 3 summers. However, that is 3 years worth of summers. And so you might have to explain that in your interview process, because they'll be like, wow, you worked there a long time. And it's like, you might have worked there a long time, but actuality, it's not all those months due to the nature of the company that you worked at. So you'll see I have 3 different position titles in italics listed underneath the overall company. And then finally, I have my DoorDash experience listed. This one, I honestly had to Google how to put DoorDash experience into resume. Not that I don't think you get experience from DoorDash, but it's just so independent and self-managed when you DoorDash that I was like, this is going to be really hard to show how hardworking I am at this position. But a couple pointers that I saw on Google were to show how many orders you handle within a certain amount of hours. That's always a great thing to put on a resume, is numbers. That's a very attainable thing that people can understand if they've never worked in the industries that you're listing on your resume. I put handle up to 10 orders within 3 to 4 hour shifts. Another thing that you can gain from honestly any position really, if you earnestly work at it, is just gaining more experience with customer service and professionalism. And since I didn't have that really listed anywhere else, I figured this would be a great place to put it. Another tip that I got from the Career Center is under every company that you list, you want to list at least 2 bullet points per position you held at that company. If you're listing just 1 bullet point, it almost becomes, did you really enjoy working there? Did you really take anything away from it? So yeah, you definitely want to show at least 2 bullet points per position at each company. Only other thing to note on this is the order in which I have my work experience listed. It goes from earliest work experience to most recent work experience. And since I've been DoorDashing on and off since March, I simply just have it put as March 2021 to current to show the people who will be interviewing me where I currently work and that I'm still holding a job, even if it's just for temporary purposes. But yeah, that's kind of the breakdown of my resume. Again, there's many different formats you can go with. I've seen dozens, if not hundreds of different formats you can go with. There's free templates on Google you can use. This is just the template that my college recommended, and since I worked so hard on it, especially during my freshman year of college, it's nice because all you have to do is just update it pretty much every year, and that's about it. So yeah, that is my resume. I hope that was helpful. And then on a Google Doc, let me show you how I prepare for an interview. I'll just go ahead and copy and paste my interview prep from literally these past 2 interviews. All right, so here on the screen, hopefully you will see what I'm looking at on my laptop screen. This is an example of a Google document that I will have pulled up again for phone interviews or Zoom interviews, since they are conveniently not in person. I can have these within my visual grasp. But again, even if I have an interview in person, I still like to do this. I don't know how I picked this skill up actually. I think it was just out of pure anxiety of like forgetting what skills I have, what are my strengths and weaknesses, and just like stumbling over words, I think is just a general anxiety I have when it comes to interviews. So I began treating it almost like back when I was in drama classes in my high school and how I would over prepare for different plays and skits and stuff. Like I would just really get to know the character. In a way, I practice this as getting to know me. And that's not to say that I don't know me. It's just to say that when anxiety gets involved, there tend to be like mental blocks that I'm like, whoa, I don't know any position I've ever held. I don't know any skills that I have. I don't know what you want of me and how to answer this question. And also just having done so many interviews, granted I haven't done one in a year, but granted that I have done so many in the past, you get used to the kinds of questions that they will ask you. There's like random ones that they throw in there. I always like to jot those down on these Google Docs, because what if in the future there's another job that asks you a similar question and you're like, wait a minute, I've answered this question before, but how did I answer it the last time, you know? So yeah, it's just a great way to re-familiarize yourself with yourself, whether you need it during a phone interview or you just want to look over it before you go in person. But long story short, this is how my general setup looks like. So I have interview prep in bold at the top, and directly underneath it is a question that almost every interview will ask you: what are your strengths, what are your skills, what are your weaknesses? And so I have that section listed here, and then I have bullet points underneath each subsection. So I have strengths, which have leadership skills, which just have all this jazz going on. I'm an organized person, I'm creative, I have interpersonal skills, aka people skills. I'm hardworking, I'm servant-hearted, and I have a willing to do whatever it takes to get things done type attitude. So these are things I like to share about myself if they ask about my strengths or skills. I also have another subsection called skills. Listed, I have my degree. I have the fact that I have 2 internships listed. Again, interpersonal skills. And I also have marketing/social media skills, which I got from one of my internships, as well as my marketing classes that I took at college. And then right underneath that, I have my weaknesses listed. Although it's never a fun topic of conversation to talk about your weaknesses, it's important for your future employer to get a well-rounded view of you. And a very common tip of advice you'll find in any video on how to do an interview is to turn your weaknesses into a positive. But I've heard mixed reviews on that. Some interviewers prefer you just being straight up with them and not turning into a positive, like, oh, I'm such a perfectionist and it's just because I care about my work so much, you know. Granted, I do have perfectionism listed. You can just say it in a positive way without forcing it to be positive, if that makes sense. So like when I tell them that I'm self-critical and I'm kind of a perfectionist, I share it as like, that's my view, that it's a weakness of mine, but it's not like I have to be down on myself as I share it. So instead of, you know, being like, I'm so self-critical and I'm a perfectionist and, you know, all boo-hoo about yourself, instead I'll say something along the lines of, I tend to be self-critical about my work, and that is because I consider myself to be a very hard-working and ethically centered person. Same with perfectionism. Anxiety and not being a public speaker, take on too much responsibility, same gist. I just try to state it plainly as this is who I am. I'm not ashamed of it. It's not my strong points. They're my weak points for a reason. I have them listed as weak points, but I'm not ashamed of them. You know, like, it's something I'm working towards. That's something I think people could highlight more in interviews, honestly, from my experiences. Instead of being like immediately turning into a positive, just explain that it's something you're working on and that's good enough for you, you know? Because again, if you're not hired for this position, it just wasn't meant to be on either side. And there's no need to put so much pressure on yourself for things like, what are my weaknesses? You know? That's the first page, right? Because that's like the most commonly talked about in an interview from the interviews that I've done. Then the second page is questions that they might ask that I might be thrown off guard or I need to do a little research beforehand. So the first question immediately, because that is another common question they'll ask, is why are you interested working at this place, at this company, at this position? And so I like to do a little research and see what they're about, what their mission statement is, or take a look at my resume and see if anything aligns with that, which can also tie into the question of why do you think you'd be a good fit in this job, and you're just ready and prepared to answer both questions. The next one I have is a time I made a mistake / how you resolved the mistake. This one always throws me off guard because, again, no one likes talking about, you know, their weaknesses or mistakes that they've made, but at the same time, it's important to show you as an employee and how you overcome these obstacles. It's a great opportunity to show how professional and polite you might have been in those situations. Normally I have some examples listed because I'm human and I have made mistakes. but I have learned from those mistakes and or handled those mistakes in a manner that I was proud of and I'm okay with sharing. Another one that sometimes they'll ask you depending on the position you're applying for is a time you demonstrated leadership / made a hard decision. So that kind of ties in with the last one potentially. If you show leadership after you made your mistake, you could kind of elaborate on that. Or if you find yourself in a workplace where there was something that caused you to have to make a hard decision and you knew you couldn't please everyone in that situation, I think that's a good time to list it here. Something that I have not been asked many times, but randomly for some interviews, are things that I am proud of, like things I've accomplished or just things I'm generally proud of. So I typically have like a bullet list of things listed just in case, because again, that's a question that always throws me off guard. I'm like, what am I proud of? What have I done with my life? I can't be proud of anything, you know? So this whole sheet is just like a brain dump. It's just like an opportunity for you to think about everything that you could potentially want to say in an interview and just have it prepared. So this is where I brain dump of things that I might be proud of. Also, sorry for my shaky voice. I'm so cold, so I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as possible. 2 more sections that I have, questions that I have. So these are 2 different sections of questions that I asked for these 2 interviews. This is another thing that I will typically Google before every interview is common questions that you should ask the interviewer. Some interviews that I have been in, they have been like thrown off guard. Like I said earlier, they've been thrown off guard by the fact that I have questions, and they're generally very happy to A, answer them, and B, just hear that you have questions, because it shows intrigue, it shows interest that you're interested in this position and that you have some stake in the claim, that it's not just a job you're applying for, it's something you've put time and thought into. I will generally Google top questions to ask interviewers, but also I don't just have basic ones. I will do my own research, like I said earlier, on the company and see if that sparks any interest in coming up with my own questions. The question I had to ask in both interviews was about me not being able to start until January, and if that was going to be a problem. A common question I ask is how much it pays or if there's benefits included. Another very basic question, what does an average day-to-day look like? Like, what are your general responsibilities in this position? What have people done in the past, etc.? That's a great question to ask. But yeah, those are pretty much the questions that I ask in a general interview. I try to ask 2 to 5, depending on how much I genuinely want to know and how much they did not answer in the interview. And then the last section I have is just notes. This is the part that I typically will print out and bring with me, is the questions and notes. So I can answer my questions, write notes as they are interviewing me. So those are the 2 main things I have pulled up. I'll typically split my screen side by side and have my resume on one side and my interview prep sheet on the other. But some tabs that I'll have in the background, I will typically have the job position / description on a separate tab in the background in case I need to reference it. Another tab I might have pulled up is the company's webpage or Facebook page, just in case I need to reference something about their company or they want to ask me about my thoughts on the company, and I can tell them that I have done research on the company. And then the last thing I generally have pulled up is like my email account, just in case they need to send me an email and I need to open it during an interview or something like that. It's ready to go. Anyway, that is my overall interview prep. I hope this was useful, at least for some people. This was not a video I even had planned on doing or intended on doing, but waking up this morning, I knew that I had an interview that I wanted to do. And then as you guys saw while I was recording, I found out I actually have 2 interviews today. And it just kind of clicked with me. I was like, why don't I film this process? Because I just thought it might be helpful or interesting for people to watch how I do the interview process. If you guys have any interview tips, please comment them down below. As a postgraduate who is friends with many postgraduate students, I know we can all use tips and advice on how to further our careers and do better in interviews. I guess my final tip of the video is that if you are currently in college and they do offer a career type center, definitely hit them up. I definitely took full advantage of that during my time at college, and I do not regret it at all. Same with career fairs. I know many colleges will have an annual career fair, maybe even twice a year. It's just good practice. Like, even if you aren't super serious about any of the companies that you're looking at a career fair, like, just putting your name out there and handing out your resume to people, it's just really good practice. And then once you become confident enough in yourself, you can find yourself in positions like me, who hasn't had to do an interview for almost a year now and is still just as confident in doing one because I've had all this practice. So what you put into it, you will definitely get out of it for sure. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys are having a good day. And if you're not, that's okay too. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.